When it comes to security and AWS, there is a question that just about every student I encounter is going to have as they go through the various AWS security mechanisms. I wanted to walk you through this here. It is the concept of a security group versus a network access control list. This can be very confusing, and I don't want you to have any problems with this when it comes to the AWS public cloud. So notice I have laid out for us the differences between these structures. So here we have our security groups, here we have our network access control lists. Notice that the first parameter we need to think about is the fact that security groups are stateful and network access control lists are stateless. So think about this. What does this mean? Well, let's say we have an EC2 instance and we want to control traffic coming into this instance and we want to lock it down to SSH traffic. The great news is with a stateful security group, we will define the inbound SSH traffic that's permitted, and dynamically, because it is stateful, we don't have to worry about the outbound rule. The SSH traffic will come in, it will be analyzed, and the appropriate return traffic can go out of that security group. So this saves us some configuration and some worry. Network access control lists, on the other hand, are stateless. So the network access control list approach, if we allow traffic in, we need to think about the return traffic, the outbound traffic, and also permit it as well. Notice also another key distinction between these entities is that a security group applies to network interfaces, whereas network access control lists apply to our subnets. So we have the ability to have a subnet with many EC2 instances inside it, and we can set up network access control list rules for inbound, and because they're stateless, we would do the appropriate outbound traffic rules. And this is on the subnet as a whole, as opposed to the network interface that we are using to make connectivity into a specific resource. Something else that's different is with our security groups, we go in and we do permits. We do allow statements. There is no way to go in there and deny something specifically, but we do have that capability with network access control lists. And the security groups are going to be evaluated as a whole. So you have a whole bunch of rules in the security group, and they'll all combine to give you the most restrictive type of access possible. This is not done in a network access control list. In a network access control list, we have statements of permits or denies that are evaluated top-down in order, and the minute there is a match, that allow or deny is processed. So they work in a different way from security groups. Finally, a key distinction that we have with our security groups, and we don't have this concept in the network ACL, of course, is that they can actually reference other security groups in your virtual private cloud. So you could have this one security group that allows a set of permissions, and you could nest it inside of another security group for the convenience of that. As you might guess, this whiteboard that we have worked through together answers a ton of potential certification questions that you could receive across just about every Amazon Web Service certification I can think of. Remember too that when you create a new account in Amazon Web Services, you are given a default virtual private cloud. And notice that default virtual private cloud is going to give you, by default, one default security group. So this security group is associated with the network interface that's going into your virtual private cloud, and you could leverage this default VPC security group to begin allowing permissions in.
You are also given a default network access control list, and notice it's going to be associated with all of your default virtual private cloud subnets. So in my case, when I created a new default VPC inside of the North Virginia region, I have 6 subnets in this default VPC, and they're all going to be associated with this default network access control list that Amazon Web Services created for me. And notice it's going to allow all inbound and outbound traffic by default. So these default structures are wide open, and you would want to, if you're going to use these default structures, start creating rule sets inside them that will just permit the traffic that you need to permit. In this nugget, you and I really dissected a security group and a network access control lists, zeroing in on those key distinctions between these two security structures. I hope you found this nugget informative, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.